which is pretty apparent after the my NYPD hashtag backfired so epically. It was so amazing. I have no idea what they thought was going to happen when they asked people to post pictures of themselves with members of the NYPD. But in order to figure out how to fight the police state and how to deal with it, we have to understand exactly how the situation came to be. It's easy to focus all of our anger on the ones committing the violence, which we should. It's human, and we should absolutely be doing that. But cops didn't just wake up one day and unanimously decide to start violently oppressing people. And injustice flows from the top down, and what we're seeing today is largely a result of the politicians wanting the public to walk around in fear of the police, wanting the police brutality, which causes so many people to just quietly and passively obey whatever arbitrary oppressive command the politicians decide to enact into law. So while we should be definitely holding those accountable who are blindly following the orders, the ones giving the orders shouldn't be let off the hook either. And most of us know this, which is why in an effort to fight government abuses and tyranny, a lot of people will turn to the political process for solutions by voting, campaigning, and petitioning. This approach basically amounts to begging the government for freedom, which to me has two major flaws. First, it has a completely horrible track record of ever achieving actual freedom. Second, it pretty much tells the politicians that we accept that we can only be free if and when they tell us we're allowed to be. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I don't need a piece of paper to tell me exactly how free I can be. So, now a lot of people will ask for alternatives. You know, if you're not going to vote, campaign, or try to work from the inside to try to change this, what do? Well, I'm starting to learn that after a millennia of societies voting themselves deeper into oppression, the power we're left with is resistance and disobedience, which comes in many forms. Some people will quietly and passively find ways to circumvent or avoid the powers that be and their laws. Some will practice civil disobedience, and some will forcibly resist. Now, Now, unfortunately, there are some people who will not disobey no matter what, because they've been conditioned to believe that while it's okay to ask the politicians to change their laws, it's never okay to disobey them, no matter how immoral the law is. And unfortunately, most of those people who will never ever disobey an immoral law are walking around in a blue uniform, a shiny badge, and a false sense of superiority. Now, most police will try to pretend that their job is to protect and to serve. It isn't. Their job is to forcibly control the rest of us by whatever means the politicians tell them to, in whatever way they tell them to. The politicians make up commands. They call them law. And their hired guns, law enforcers, will hurt anyone who is caught disobeying that law. And police know this. Which is why a lot of times you'll hear them say, I don't make the law, I just enforce it. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but that wouldn't work if I tried it. If I decided to rob a grocery store or hurt anyone, don't blame me, just doing what I was told. I'm pretty sure the police would react the same way that we should react when they use that line on us, which is, you are responsible for what you do. Now, a lot of people will make a distinction between police brutality that is legal and police brutality that is illegal. To me, that distinction is meaningless and ridiculous. If you initiate violence against someone who hasn't hurt or threatened another person, that's immoral, whether you're wearing a badge or not. Legislation doesn't dictate right from wrong. It doesn't determine right from wrong. It never did. It never will. If you use force to defend yourself against an aggressor, that's perfectly legitimate and moral. But again, if you initiate force against a perfectly innocent human being, that makes you the bad guy, whether or not there is a law saying that you're supposed to do that. Now, when it comes to police brutality, I don't care if it's politician approved or illegal police brutality. It's wrong, and it's up to the rest of us. And it's up to the rest of us to put a stop to it. which can seem really overwhelming. So a lot of people will say, well, how do we do that? Well, police are human beings. They are capable of, hopefully capable of reasoning. And whenever we can, we should begin by trying to appeal to their reason and their morality. We should try to persuade them to do the right thing, which will include disobeying immoral orders. So that can be tough to do in the moment. However, such appeals only work on people who still have the ability to reason and see right from wrong. But unfortunately, a lot of law enforcement these days don't fit that description. Now, I don't know what those shiny badges are made of, but it almost seems like once you put them on, wearing them causes some type of brain damage, where it makes a person incapable of judging right from wrong, of thinking for themselves, and it just gives them a twisted, backwards view of reality. Of course, not every cop is the same, and they shouldn't all be treated like one. When we approach someone in uniform, or they approach us, we don't have to go in yelling and screaming and being irate. If they can be calm, polite, considerate, and rational, we should be calm, polite, considerate, and rational. I'll be the first to admit I did not always approach police officers that way. I went through my phase of just absolute anger and screaming at them when I would see them, committing any kind of injustice on anyone. But I now view that as less than effective, to put it mildly. It doesn't work, and it just pisses them off even more. And while not every cop is the same, and some are less violent than others, I would think of a good cop as one who would stop a bad cop when he sees him doing something wrong or trying to hurt someone, which unfortunately rarely ever happens. In the event that a police officer with a conscience decides to step in or speak out against brutality inflicted by his fellow officers, he's normally said to have broken the blue code, and is normally threatened, ostracized, intimidated, and if he's not fired outright by the department for doing the right thing and possibly making the department look horrible, then they're usually bullied into resigning. Which means the system as it stands now, instead of weeding out the bad cops, has been weeding out the good ones. And the reinforcing of bad behavior, it comes not only from the other individual officers, but from police unions and official policies put out by entire police departments. I think, what was it, Dallas, yes. The Dallas Police Department just issued a policy allowing cops involved in shootings to say nothing about what happened for 72 hours after the incident, giving them time to review any available video or any other evidence regarding the incident before they make a statement. The purpose of this policy is actually pretty clear. It's to stop cops from getting caught lying on record or under oath, which has happened time and time again. Obviously, the agenda here is not to get to the truth and expose it, but to cover it up. And when the truth can't be covered up, departments will usually still make excuses for the police officer. Rarely does an officer face any retribution, even for committing violent criminal acts. Often they even get rewarded. Whenever you hear about an officer being suspended with pay, it means he's been given a vacation, a paid vacation for his actions. And if that's not reinforcement for bad behavior, I don't know what is. The average cop knows that 9 times out of 10, no matter what he does, he will receive unconditional support from his peers and superiors. Now, the resulting us versus them mentality has gotten so bad recently that police departments are almost telling the public, we not only find police abuse as acceptable, we encourage it. And then they wonder why people hate the police who are killing them and getting away with it. So whenever you are dealing with the police, make sure you know what consequences to expect. Dealing with police can be, and this is going to sound funny, but it's true, it can be a lot like dealing with a wild animal. You may want to talk softly and move slowly, just out of self-preservation. If you go in yelling with arms flailing, you are probably going to get viciously attacked, if not outright shot. Now, then again, it's important to remember that even if you don't do that, be very careful around police, just because even unprovoked, they may decide to cage, tase, beat, or kill you. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and that's what we're doing here, is trying to fix that. There is an important distinction to be made here. On the one hand, we should remain calm and polite unless they escalate things and make things confrontational and violent. On the other hand, it would be a huge mistake to act as if their misconduct is okay with us. Remaining civil is always a good idea, whether it's because you're trying to win them over with logic or compassion, or if you're just trying to avoid being assaulted. But we should never act or speak as if we think those shiny badges give them special authority and extra rights. In most cases, if they are doing something immoral, we can peacefully point out to them that they are the bad guys, that we don't view their actions as legitimate, and that we don't view them as protectors, but as aggressors. It may be uncomfortable, even really scary to do this, but it is important that we make it uncomfortable for them to blindly obey orders, especially orders that may hurt us or the ones around us. If we try to win them over by pretending that what they're doing is legitimate or just, or by condoning or making excuses for their actions, that doesn't do anything to push peace and justice forward. It only reinforces the idea in their head that they're supposed to treat people this way. Now, there are a lot of practical suggestions about things to do or not do whenever you come face to face with someone with a badge. Most of us know these, but it can be difficult to remember them, whether under duress or being physically assaulted. Things like don't ever consent to questioning or searches, record all police interactions, get their badges, get their badge numbers and names, and call out. Bring attention to what's going on to get as many witnesses as possible. And obviously, witnesses with cameras are especially valuable. But then there is the more uncomfortable question. When things get really bad, if those wearing badges are brutally assaulting someone or about to kill someone, when do you stop talking and do something about it? And I mean by force if necessary, whatever it takes to stop the aggressors from hurting an innocent person. Now, it's definitely film, absolutely film, but if someone's life is on the line, when do you put the camera down and break up the fists or the guns? Now, I don't presume to be able to tell anyone else where that line should be, or where they should be, what that answer should be, where their line should be. That's a personal decision. We have families, we have priorities, and that's totally understandable. But coming from someone who was in that position before, if you see someone who is being beaten by men in uniform or just street thugs, think about what you would want the spectators to do for you, and then do it. Unless the police officers we know that we have such a line that they will not cross, they will continue to assume that they can get away with anything, including outright murder, as in many cases. Now, when we're watching yet another example of police brutality, whether it's on YouTube or right in front of our face, we have to remember that each individual case, it's easy to focus on that as the problem, when in reality, each individual case of police brutality is just a symptom of a much larger problem. Now, it's very important to treat these symptoms, whether it be through, trying to appeal to a cop's conscience or just stepping in and being active. But treating the symptoms won't fix the problem until we can identify and defeat the underlying disease, which is authoritarianism. When it comes to the symptoms, there are many ways to create deterrence, whether it's by appealing to a cop's conscience, by shaming him, or by scaring him away. Sometimes mere words can accomplish it. Sometimes injustice can only be stopped by using opposite and equal force to stop the aggression of the agents of the state. But the ultimate solution is actually to end the mentality and philosophy making these symptoms happen in the first place. The idea that legislation and badges and uniforms actually grant special authority and special rights to certain people, making it okay for them to forcibly control, extort, assault, and cage people, That is the lie that we have to get rid of. And unfortunately, it's not only law enforcement that believe this lie, but most of their victims and the majority of the public believe this lie as well. Until we can destroy that lie and help people to realize that we each own ourselves and that no one has the right to rule another, expect the symptoms to keep getting worse. As long as the people think we need to be dominated and extorted by government, we will be dominated and extorted by government. But when the people finally figure out that society should be free, with no masters and no slaves, then that's what we'll have. Now, I want to end with a quick message to the people who wear the badges. If anyone is in attendance, or whoever's going to see this. You've probably noticed that more and more people are starting to distrust, fear, and hate the police. Have you ever stopped to wonder why that is?
Because they're bullies.
Do you to any police officers, do you really think the whole world has just turned into a group of malicious criminals that can't stand to see you dishing out righteous justice on everybody? I don't think so. I know that if someone were to talk about having to forcibly defend themselves against me, I would wonder what I did to deserve that, and then stop doing it. If you're here to protect people and to perform a service, why do you suppose more and more people are arming themselves mentally and physically for a possible violent confrontation with you? Now, you could choose not to do something that makes so many people hate you. Good people won't need to forcibly resist you if you choose not to inflict injustice upon them in the first place. And saying it's your job doesn't make it okay and won't make your intended victims or their families any more happy about it. The fastest, most peaceful way for oppression to end is for agents of the state to refuse to commit it. If you don't want people to call you a fascist, don't be a fascist. That's it.